This is Glenn, Red Dog Motorsports. Welcome back to the channel. I want to thank everybody for all the support I've been giving. Lots of new subscribers. It's been a lot of fun. Getting some comments too, which is neat. I like it. This week, we're back on the Tahoe. I'm unboxing the new motor. It is not a Texas Speed 427, unfortunately. I wish it was. I need one of those for the buggy. Since as you saw in the last video, I blew mine up. But at any rate, we have actually a 5.7. This is a bored over 5.3. All the infrastructure is the same as normal 5.3, just our bore's a little bit different. It's kind of like doing the old 383 stroker setup, that kind of thing. But we get a new oil pickup, already has the O-ring on it. It comes with the, here it is, over here. New oil pump. So we got to install this. And not much else. I'll bring you around the other side. Show you, it doesn't even have a front cover on it. I don't even know if it comes with a front cover. I'll have to check. I'll have to go look in the other box. I've got a box with some filters, or not filters, but gaskets and whatnot in it. Yeah. So we're missing some parts. But we're gonna get the new oil pump installed. We'll get all the new front accessory stuff, the front cover, all that good stuff done. And we'll get going. But I just thought I'd show you real quick. What it looks like when you get basically a long block. I want to say he bought this from Summit. This is one of Summit Racing's motors. It is a remanufactured, so it's not a brand new one. And it is 53448/53 block. So let's get to it. All right, so I got the lift plate installed on the motor. I went ahead, took a flashlight, inspected inside the intake runners. I want to make sure that nothing was in there. We did have to blow them out. There was a couple of small pieces of wood. Just, they probably wouldn't have hurt the motor, but oh darn it, my tape's not going to stick. Let me wipe these down with some with the change in humidity and everything. I got moisture on them. So we're going to take a little bit of brake clean, wipe them down, see if that doesn't displace the water, get them so that this will stick. But now I want to tape off my openings so that we can make sure not to inadvertently drop something in there. Always a good idea to inspect. Anytime you get these, you just never know. Maybe somebody dropped a nut washer, something in there when they were loading it up. Anything can happen during shipping, so it's always just a good idea to check. But we're going to get this closed up now that it's out of the bag. And see if we can't get the basics on it. Even if I don't permanently install the valve covers, that kind of thing, at least now that it's not covered, we'll get them on it and make sure that we're not worried about things getting in the motor, because that would be disastrous. A little bit of tape is very helpful. Don't want to leave it on here too long. And since I have all new sensors, we'll get the new sensors installed. I'm still waiting on the oil pressure sensor, but I can get the cam sensor in it. We'll get the steam ports on it. And then not too worried about the front yet. The back looks like it's mostly in place, but there we go. The valve covers can actually go on. I don't know of any reason they can't, other than It would be nice before we fire this up to get some oil poured down these, just to get it all lubricated. One thing I have to say about this motor is it is very dry. I didn't see any engine assembly lube on the cam, so we're definitely gonna have to oil it up before we do this. One of the ways I think we'll take get into one of the oil galley plugs over here on the side, and we'll use a 2-gallon sprayer and some fittings, and we'll plug into that, pump that sprayer up, and pump some oil through the motor before we fire it up, because like I said, this thing's very dry. All right, guys, so I got the other motor up on the engine stand. I've gotten a little bit moved over from this motor to that one, like the steam ports and a couple of the other minor little pieces. I've got the water pump, power steering, and alternator bracket removed. Getting ready to remove the crank pulley. Not sure that this pulley is going to work real well, and mainly it's just because I don't think that's going to spin. Need a thrust bearing or something. But on the back side of the crank pulley, move you over a little bit, you can see there's 3 indentations, and that's where your puller should grab. Got it set up. Now I just need to get my 5/8 and run this down. It should pull right off. Now you want to make sure not to grab out here. This is rubber isolated, so there's it's your steel, rubber, and then your outer assembly, and that's what gives you your vibration dampening. So let's see if we can get this removed. All right, I went and grabbed the right socket. Of course, it'd be helpful if I probably didn't have this up there. That's what I was afraid of. It's walking a little bit. Need to see if I can get that moved back over or get the centering style in there. Of course, I might be able to use some lubricant. Or just a hammer, because that's the way I roll. It is coming off though. Just have to keep recentering it, because, you know, gotta do it the hard way. I do have the proper tool to install this as well. All right, you're getting ready to fall off there. Don't do that. Now, I could loosen this up each time to move this, but what would be the fun of that? I'm sure there's some way to try to clamp that down as well. Come on. Yeah, we're almost there. Almost pulled out. I guess I could have drilled a hole into the end of this and centered it that way. Again, you know, what would be the fun? I wouldn't get to use a hammer. Uh-oh. Well, my nuts came off of my holder. All right, this should be about it. Oh, darn it. We're almost there though. All right, I'll finish getting this off. I'm gonna have to reset everything. I won't bore you with that. But as you can see, we're about out. So let's get to it. Guys, I'm wrapping up for the day. A little bit early out here, but I got some other things I need to get done. One, I thought the oil pump was going to come with the shims for installing it. It does not seem to have them. So I need to go buy some shimming so that we can properly get this set. There's supposed to be some spaces between the crankshaft and the oil pump rotor itself, as well as the interior of the rotor on the housing. So I got to get all that set up. And if any of you have ever worked on aircraft before, I have misplaced a wrench. I don't know where it's at. I've had 2 open engines, so I need to find that wrench. And as aircraft mechanics know, nobody goes home until all the toolboxes are full again. So I gotta find my wrench. I don't know where it's at. I've set it down. I didn't use it on the engines. I was using it on taking the case apart, the packing that it came in. So I don't know what I did with it, but I gotta find it. I don't think it's in the motor, but you gotta make sure. So I'm gonna take care of those couple of things. Tomorrow when we get back out here, we'll get the oil pump installed, we'll get the front cover installed, all of the front accessories on it, and we'll actually be pretty close to being able to install it. I don't have the crank bolt. They are 100% replacement. Every time you take one out, you got to replace it with a new one. One-time use. So I got to make sure that we get a new one of those. I can install the pulley and then install the crank bolt once it's in the motor, or once it's in the Tahoe. That's not a big deal. There's plenty of space in there to do that. But we got to get that ordered, and I got to find out if he wants to replace the flywheel bolts. That's recommended. Plenty of people get away with not doing it, so I'm gonna leave that up to him. If he does, and we got to wait a couple of days to get those parts in, it's not a big deal. We got plenty of other things to work on the Tahoe. We're gonna close it out for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. All right, guys, we're back. It's the next day. I had some fun this morning. Went to go get some cabinets with a friend of mine, and that was a snafu. But at any rate, we're back on the fun stuff. Gonna set the oil pump. Now I know I talked about shimming it, but I read through what Melling says to do. This is a Melling oil pump, and since this is a ATK block and it comes with a warranty, and we're gonna put it in a daily driver, I wanna make sure we maintain that. I don't wanna void a warranty by opening it up and Melling and them saying I screwed something up by opening up their factory set, everything. So we're gonna go by the video. So what I've done, I took some assembly lube, we put it on the crank snout, and we just aligned the inner gears of the oil pump up, slid it on. I have finger tight the 4 bolts that hold this on. It leaves it so that you can still wiggle the oil pump. I'm gonna bring you in closer. I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do the rest of the way. Just step right up. There we go. All right, I marked the top of the crank snout this way and the bolt this way. I know when I get 1 full revolution. We're gonna take a longer wrench. I'm gonna rotate the crank 1 full revolution. That is going to set the outside perimeter gear in here distances so that you get it basically centered up. And then we're gonna tighten down these 4 bolts to 18 foot-pounds. This is straight off of Melling, the manufacturer of the pump. This is how they say to do it. There's lots of people that say shimming it, but the shimming it is more based on a high performance application. So somebody that's gonna be running this thing at wide open throttle and whatnot. So we don't need it for a standard daily driver, but for a daily, we can just do this method. One 360-degree revolution of the crank, like so. And then tighten down the 4 bolts. Tighten them down evenly. You don't need to go all at once on one, because we're trying to keep this thing even. So spread it out. Spread the love first. Sorry, my elbow's probably in the way. It's probably getting old and wrinkly. All right. There's one. We'll go the opposite hand. 2, 3, and of course I missed 4. All right, oil pump is set. If we weren't trying to maintain the warranty, I'd take that off and see how well it did with the shims, but we're not going to do that. So this is the old crank bolt. We'll take it back out, get rid of it. Now it's time to put the front cover on. So I'm going to show you setting the front seal on it, and then we'll get it set in place. There is a procedure, because we've got to make sure it's centered here. There's a little plastic tool that came with it, and we need to get the oil pan and pickup on. Let me get set up. We'll show you that. All right, guys, I'm set up at the table to install. I'm going to knock out, then install the seal in the front cover. I'm going to bring you down here, walk you through the process of what I'm doing. This really isn't that hard. Got a couple of different things here. So to knock it out, I'm using, this is an old just U-bolt, but anything that will support the case and give you a little space to drive this out, it's all you need. I just didn't want it to sit there, and we'll just set the case up here. We just need a little bit of room to knock that seal down. Just make sure you're not hitting the metal. Shouldn't take but a couple of taps. Oops, of course I cut right through it. And that's all it takes. You just got to knock it out. Now this one's pretty clean. We're going to take, I'll use a little bit of brake clean in a rag. We'll clean the inside. You don't have to put RTV on it. These should seal up tight enough that it's not a problem. You can install some RTV if you want. I would definitely lubricate it with a little engine oil or something. You need something to help it slide a little easier. And that's why I like a little bit of wet RTV. A little wet RTV, it helps it slide in, and then it grips. Now you don't need a ton. Don't even need to see it when you're done, but it'll help. So we got the new seal here. And this one has the plastic piece already installed in it. See that plastic? So that's just going to be driven right in there. That one actually feels like I could just push it in. Now, if you don't have the plastic piece in it, you can use a nut driver or a seal driver like this. But with that plastic piece in there, unless you want to take it out and put it back in, you got to use something that's big enough to go around the whole thing. In this case, I've got a gear. I don't even know what it went to. Looks like it's brand new. Must be a bowl gear out of a transmission or transfer case. But it goes around, it fits perfectly. That's why you don't throw that stuff away if you can help it. Oops, just dropped my knife on the floor. And of course my RTV dried up, so we'll poke a hole in it with the pieces there. And then I'll get it all over my finger like I always do. And we'll just get a little bit on it. Doesn't need much. Nothing worse than putting a motor together and having it leak, though. I detest leaks. Motor can run badly. As long as it's not leaking oil, I'm good. I'll deal with it. Oh, dumbass. See, and that's what I'm talking about. And then you do something silly like that, like push on the plastic piece and ruin everything you were doing. All right, there, I fixed it, pulled it out. All right. Get it level. Now, this is flush. It needs to be flush with the front of the case, not any deeper than that. All right. Just walk it around. Keep it centered up. When I hear that sound, then we know we're getting close. Of course, it wants to fight me a little bit. That's all right, just keep working it. And you'll get it in there. A little cleanup. And we're good. Now we will use, this plastic piece is used when we install it on the crank snout to keep it centered, because this doesn't have any locating pins on the outside of it. So when you go to put it on, it free floats and you can get it set to one side or the other of the crank and then you get a leak. But this little piece here, you either got to shim it or center it. So we'll get into all that in a minute. But for now, I'm going to set up. We'll do the oil pan and the pickup. All right, guys. When I left you yesterday, I said we were going to come over to the motor and install the oil pickup, the oil pan, and the front cover. When I got over here, I realized the supplier did not provide a windage tray with this block. So other one's on the other block, but it's packed away, and we're, like I said, we're trying to keep that motor somewhat complete. So we've had to order a windage tray. It'll be here probably tomorrow or Friday. But I can't move forward with installing any of this because it needs to go down. Then the oil pickup gets bolted on top of it. So kind of in the order of things, that's what we need to do. And then I got excited. I did end up installing the front cover, mainly because I was just kind of test fitting things and walking through this plastic spacer piece that I was telling you about. Didn't look right with how it was on this unit, and so I was looking at how it needed to be installed. I realized it was backwards, and then before you knew it, I had it installed. But I'll walk you through the process. So if you come over here with me, drop you down a little bit. You don't really need to see the process to know how to do this. This plastic piece right here, I'll pull it out now. Sorry, I had to walk off and get some pliers. This little piece, it was installed backwards before, but you slide it through the housing, through the seal, and then with this loose, all the bolts, you just finger tighten them so that this housing can move. You snug this piece down on the snout of the crank, and it centers the seal the proper distance from the crank snout so that when you install the balancer, it's sitting concentric with the seal. And once that's done, then you can go through and tighten up the bolts to 18 foot-pounds. Don't follow. All right, so we're back over by the motor. I got the fuel pump installed. I didn't film a single bit of it. it basically, one second. There, a little better. To me, you look crooked. Maybe you're not. But at any rate, I didn't film any of it. I was underneath there. It was very tight. My shoulder was killing me. All this BS, it just wasn't worth it. But nothing special happened while I did it, other than fiddling with those silly little clips they use on everything nowadays. But it's in, new one's installed. It was the same thing. I did notice there was one difference, and that was the fuel sending unit lever was on the opposite side from the previous one, which put it over next to some hoses. Hopefully that doesn't affect the operation. I don't know why it was different, but it was. I really didn't see that there was a way for me to change it. So I installed it and everything should work, assuming that there's not a reason that it doesn't. Now we're moving on to installing the crank pulley. For this, I'm using my install tool. I've already got it in there. Hold on. Let me turn you. All right. Well, you guys are just all out of position. So, install tool comes with a shaft, much like any puller, that threads in to the crank, the same as the bolt. I go ahead and I snug it down. I don't tighten it, but I get it so I know that it's bottomed out. And then then you put on the pulley. I spray the crank snout down with a little WD-40 and the inside of this, just to help them move on each other. And then you got a washer, and then you got a thrust bearing stack up, and then the install nut. And then I take some assembly lube. In this case, I'm using Lucas, and I put that where the seal, the crank seal, or the seal that rides on the pulley is going to be, and I put assembly lube there. That way there's a little bit of something, lubricant there, when you start it up, so you don't immediately gall up the rubber or something like that. So after that, it's a simple matter of just taking my socket, and we're going to run this in. Don't use the impact. Most of these you shouldn't need to hold the crank. It's possible. I know that there's some people out there using heat on these before they install them. I'm not a huge fan of that, and that's just because you don't want to disrupt this rubber. What are you guys doing over there? How did you get over there? Apparently things are swinging around. But at any rate, it goes on fairly easy. I mean, we're not talking. And there, we've bottomed out. Don't need to crank on it any more than that. We'll get that with the bolt. See, now we're starting to turn the crank. Don't need to do that. All right, so now we take the install tool out. As I was saying, here's the nut, thrust bearing, stack up, my washer. Come on. Nice thick washer. This goes up against that pulley. And then I'll have to loosen this up since I tightened it up with a wrench. Hold on. All right, and then there's the install tool part. So we'll put all this away. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install the old bolt. We're going to torque it to 240 foot-pounds. That ensures that this is set all the way back up and has the proper alignment up against the face of the crank. And then we install the new bolt, and I gotta look up the torque, but it's like 39 foot-pounds or something like that, and then a 140-degree turn. But let me get you set up, and we'll go through that process. All right, I got everything I needed. So, I'm gonna use a pry bar, and I just set it in here. Now, for someone my age, this torque is actually until your middle two, I think it's your C7 and your C6 pop and your hip creaks. Once you achieve that, then you got 240. All right, now we take it out. Sorry, I know I keep blocking the camera with my big belly. Oh, we're gonna need that wrench again. Put that tight, that's on there. Come on. There we go. Holy cow. All right. Now, old bolt gets thrown away, and we're going to use the new bolt. In the trash can. So we got a new GM genuine parts. This is part number 1255780. I don't know how much it costs, but it comes already pre-lubed. Now that is something, before I forget, I did lubricate that old bolt before I did the Torx on it. You want that thing to slide so you get the proper torque numbers. Otherwise you're gonna get something different. All right, so this, not as concerned. You don't need to worry about lubricating it. And that's just because we're only going to, I think it was 37. I said 39 before. And yeah, this time it's only 37. Well, don't hold it against me. I can't remember everything. Just be happy that I'm torquing it, not just running it down with an impact. All right, 37 isn't much. Okay, now we'll get that set in there. Now I gotta mark it and measure out 140 degrees, and then we'll go ahead and run her to that. So straight up would be our start. If we come around, straight down would be 180. Half of that's 90. Let's see, what is it? 90, 100. So it's actually, what is that? Good God, I can't think. 140 is going to be 5. So it's going to be halfway past. Right? Wrong. It's 90 degrees. So it's just about halfway past. 90 degrees. So if we get from there to there, we should be pretty darn close. I know, very scientific, wasn't it? I could pull out a degree finder or something and get into it all, but that's going to be just fine. It's going to work. Good God Almighty. I don't know if I'm going to get that. Yeah, and I'm going to get it about halfway. It sure does seem like a wrong number, to be honest. All right. So I switched to a bigger wrench. Now hopefully I can operate both of these and get this done. Oh darn it. It sure does seem like a wrong number. It's not, but don't make it seem right. How close are we? We're getting there. I got about another 30 degrees to go. Come on, baby. Couple more degrees. Well, that's about all I'm getting. I got it to 130, so that's gonna have to work. All right, that was a pain in the butt, but with that done, we've got new flex plate bolts. All right, now we got to get torque on these. These get torqued down to 74 foot-pounds. So a little bit easier than the last one. Now you can always, if you're concerned, we could do these in 2 stages. It's not a bad idea. Of course, I'm going to need some way to hold this. They make a special tool that bolts to the block that fits into the ring gear that holds this while you do it. I don't have it, so I got to figure out another way. Probably going to involve my pry bar again. So, lucky I got long arms. So I'm just going to like 50 the first round, and we'll pop it up to 74. And yes, I zero out my torque wrench and then I run it back up. So I go 50 to 0 and then 0 to 74. Don't go from 50 to 74. You don't get an accurate reading from the spring. There's a spring inside here. And when you turn your dial, your handle, you're stretching that spring and it's got a measured rate. And then it basically, was you pull on it, then it causes that spring to stretch, which gives you your, all right, let's start. We'll start in our original one. There we go. All right. Now these should all click as we go around. Oops. I don't know how I lost my spot to hold it, but I did. All right, we're good. All right, guys, we're back at it. Had to wait on parts to get here, but the windage tray is here and I went and got nuts to install it. So now we can do the windage tray, the oil pan, and the oil pickup. And then we can actually roll the motor back over. We could pour oil in it. We can put the ignition system on it, and basically that'll actually get us pretty close to being ready to stab it in, because I think I'm going to do the water pump, the front accessory drive for the alternator and power steering pump bracket, and the AC. I'll do all that after it's in there. So let me bring you in close. We'll get the oil pan installed and then we'll flip it over and start taking a look at the rest of it. So just step right on over here. So, new windage tray. Can't mess it up. It says what direction it goes. All right, I'm back. Went and got all my tools. So first thing we're gonna do is just run the windage tray bolts down. I've left off the two that hold the oil pump, or oil pump pickup, more specifically. But we'll get to that in a minute. These, I didn't really find a torque for them, but based upon the bolt size, we're gonna go with 18 foot-pounds. These are just an M8 1.25 thread. Most of the others of that similar size have been the 18 foot-pounds. So we'll run with it. I'm not necessarily going in any specific order. None of this is critical to anything other than just keeping oil from cavitating. So, pretty easy to install. This is no big deal. Oil pump pickup is a little more critical. You do want to have this in here. This piece is about keeping the crankcase and the oil from splashing up into each other, causing aeration, things like that. They used to call them, you've heard of crankcase scrapers or crank scrapers, that kind of thing. Provides the same service, basically. All right, there's that one. Now I'm going to use some Parker O-ring lube. This stuff's great when you're doing hydraulics, things like that. Working with getting O-rings set, like when you're rebuilding shocks, that kind of thing. It just helps get the O-ring set so you don't pinch it. So we're going to set this in place. Not too worried about lining the bolt holes. I'm more worried about sliding the O-ring in. See, that went in nice and easy. Now, I've got in my hands one of the lockdowns. I had bought this for my rig and my oil pump pickup was too big, it wouldn't fit. So it's been sitting on my shelf for several years. We're gonna use it for this build. LS has come with 2 bolt holes already installed and tapped from the factory. The hold down, the tab that's on here is just brazed on there. And sometimes these can sit there and work. That can come loose and allows this pickup tube to walk away from the oil pump. And then you get cavitation due to that O-ring. It's a real, I won't say common problem, but it's not uncommon. All right, now do be careful when installing this that you do not drop the bolt down in the block, because then you got to go find it. So I'm holding this in here with the finger while I put my socket on it, and then I'll just work it around. Make sure we got it installed. The torque on these would be in inch-pounds. I don't know what it is, so we're going to use the German torque of Gutentite. Don't need to go insane with it. You want it tight, but you literally don't have to sit there and make this like, I mean, you'll break them off if you ain't careful. It's not like the crank bolt. We're not doing 140 degrees afterwards with the extension bar on it. All right. Pickup is locked. We'll put the last 2 bolts on. Crank them down. And the last one. Now what we're gonna do, I gotta go get some RTV. We'll put that in the 4 corners of where the block meets the front and back cover. We need to seal those up with RTV before we put the gasket on it. Then we can set the cover in place. Need to break open. We got an ARP bolt set for this. Rather nice. All right, there we go, locked in. All right, we're back. Forgive my crude methodology here, but it's drying out. So I just poked a hole in the side of it so we can get to some of the good stuff, and then I'll have to throw it away. We don't need a lot of it. Just enough to get it in there. That's way too much. It's perfect. All right, so we're gonna get a little smear of this on there. I don't know why I'm getting more. I need to wipe off the excess I got over there. Just needs to be in these 4 corners. We don't need it coming off and getting into the block. It's not like doing the rear seal on a 4.0 Jeep motor. Those things, man, I hate setting the rear seal on those. I've done a couple of them, and sometimes it don't matter how many times you do it, they just won't seal. All right, in the garbage that goes. Now I got to make sure that these holes here line up for the oil. That's where our oil pump, our oil filter and all that's going to sit. So it needs to go in and out. No RTV needed on the oil pan itself. All right, now this has no dowels, so just get it set in place. You can look through, make sure that you're aligned. Now, as for the washers, being that these are ARPs, oh yeah, that's something else I need to do. I almost forgot. ARP says that you need to lubricate these. I don't have any other lubricant. I'm just going to use a squirt of WD-40 just to give us a little bit of lube underneath the washers. This is not torque critical. We're going to torque it, but it's not a big deal. It really isn't. I am curious though. So I'm missing 2 washers and I don't know why. Don't know why I would have 2 of these that didn't have washers, but that's the way it came. So these long skinny ones are going to get a different torque than everybody else, assuming I can find the holes. Come on. There we go. All right. Now, as with all ARPs, if you look, the washer's got a concave part or whatever you want to call it in the center, and the other side does not. That concave part needs to go up towards their bolt head. They've got a little bit of a chamfer right there that helps center everything. You want to make sure that those 2 align and not install them backwards. Or if they have specific instructions regarding the fastener that you're using, you need to follow them. But general rule, if you're looking at using ARPs, that's going to follow true. We'll just look back here. I'm just using my fingers to make sure that the 2 parts of the case are flush. You can feel it. You can use a straight edge. I've done it both ways. Then we'll tighten up 2 on either side, just to make sure it's all held in place. And then we can tighten them down. We're going to 18 foot-pounds. I know before I said 11 and 22. I got that mixed up. That was the water pump that gets 11 and 22. This just gets 18 foot-pounds. That's what I get for trying to run off of memory and not data. I know everything. Always have. Just having a slight recall problem. All right, I'm installing the passenger side manifold. I've got 2 bolts on the outside, and these are labeled manifold side, down, etc. So the 2 bolts on the outside are just placeholders for the moment. This allows you a place to set the gasket. And then I've got some, this is Loctite LB771. This is a nickel anti-seize. It's good up to 2400 degrees against galling and stuff like that, supposedly. But I like my anti-seize, and this stuff is supposed to work. So we're gonna put it on there. It is rather on the spendy side, but LS's are absolutely notorious for breaking and having issues with getting these exhaust bolts out, or manifold bolts out. So if I can do something to make these work, I'm gonna do it. So 6 per side. I gotta go look up the torque. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's not a lot. I know that. I still haven't fixed or finished messing with the driver's side manifold, so for right now, today, we're just gonna get this one in. I'll have to look up the manifold bolts. I don't have it written down. We will go see what GM says. It's not going to be a lot. It's going to be in the neighborhood of 60, 80 foot-pounds. I mean, we got a 8mm bolt going into an aluminum head. And I do know we're going to start in the center here, and then we're going to go out. We're going to start there and go out and basically work this thing out from the center out. So that's a given. And now we'll put anti-seize on the outer 2. We should be good. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with me torquing these down. You've seen a guy run a torque wrench before. But when next I bring you back, we should be getting ready to stab this. I've got to put like I said, I got to get the motor mounts, get them put on, then we're ready to go in. All the sensors are in place. As you can see, I've got the ignition coils in place. We've got oil in it. I will show you real quick while I've got you, before I forget. Let me drop you down. Much easier to show you guys now than when I get this thing in place. So keep talking about the bolt that comes out. It's this one right here. This is a oil passage. It was done when it was drilled when they machined it. This goes directly into the oil pump. If you take this off, you can see directly into the oil pump. So we'll take that one off. That's where we're going to stick our hose to pressurize the system. And it goes from here, the oil galley goes back, it'll fill the oil pump up, and then it'll go through the pump, up into the top of the heads, and then back down through the mains. And we should be able to get pretty much oil into everything if we crank it over while we're doing that. All right? All right, guys, I told you, well, the manifold's done. It's on. Yeah, you can see the new stud right there. Well, maybe not you. I can see it. See, right there, brand new. Okay, now that that's on, the motor mounts are here, they're over there. But before I want to install it, I want to go ahead and oil this up. I told you we were going to do it 3 ways. One was I was going to pour the oil in and just get kind of a coating of oil on stuff. 2 was I'm going to pump it up. And 3, while I have the spark plugs in the holes right now just to keep debris from getting in there, they're not tightened in, they're finger tight. So I'm going to take those back out and then we'll crank it once it's in there right before we start it. But for now, I'm gonna pump this up, and we're gonna pump this in and get it to run through the motor. Now, I've only got 2 quarts in here, but it doesn't mean that I can't open up the drain pan and drain a couple of quarts out back into here and run more through it. So that's what we're gonna do. Now I don't guarantee, we'll see how this goes in there. I don't hear anything. But guaranteed, this will oil the oil pump. Grab me a deep well. We'll crank the motor over a little bit too, just see if that helps. All right, I heard some. It takes a little minute. Well, I'm leaking from the fitting. That's a good sign. All right, I'm gonna keep doing this, and I'll bring you back when I'm ready to stab it into the engine. Or the motor bay, sorry. All right, guys, it's the next day. And as you can see, we're getting ready to stab the motor. Ronan's gonna help me. We're gonna push it over the top of the Tahoe. We will not be going underneath the motor. And then Ronan will likely operate my trolley and gantry for me. And then we'll lower it down and get her stuck in place. I'm gonna put you on time lapse for it. It shouldn't take us that long with 2 of us, a little bit easier than it was with just myself. Let's get to it. That motor's in. I'm gonna have Ronan release the cables. I think I'll put the valley cover on it. But that's gonna conclude this week's video. Motor's back in, all that good stuff. Next week, you'll see us finish stabbing in the transmission. I'll get all of the top stuff and accessories mounted to the motor, and then we'll get into tuning. I still need to figure out how to get the wideband connected to it because we really can't tune without it. But we'll work on tuning speed density, tune the MAF, which really shouldn't be that hard. We're really just adding some fuel and because the volumetrics have changed in the motor a little bit. But beyond that, we're not having to do much. We might get into the spark tables. We'll see how things go, how much difficulty we have with trying to get things tuned. Excuse me. But otherwise, happy Easter, and we'll catch you on the next one.